Okay, so we're on to our final panel of the day, and then we're going to say our thank yous, and then we can all go for drinks, and people can go and queue and hug Steve, and everyone else can have a glass of rosé. So, welcome everybody. Let me just in fact, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself and have people, because this is a great panel about fundraising. So, Mike, do you want to go first?
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Cass, Head of Sales in the UK for SellersFi. We're a direct lender into consumer brands, headquartered in Florida, United States, and operating across the whole of the North American continent, a few EU geographies as well on a case-by-case basis, and obviously the UK as well.
Kirsty?
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsty. I'm a principal at JamJar Investments, which is a 100 million consumer fund based in the UK. The heritage of the fund is actually innocent drinks. So 3 of the founders there founded JamJar. We focus purely on early stage consumer, and we really love DTC. So great to see some of our portfolio companies, Surrey, Tails, Wild, all some of ours, as well as doing things like Skin & Me and Who Gives a Crap. It's an area that we really love.
I think anyone who looks at your website is like, oh my God, they've got a lot of consumer brands. And Steve, you've obviously introduced yourself already. Great. Okay, so we chose each of you because you all sort of cover different stages of the funding journey for brands. So Mike, just starting with you, what are the financing options brands have, and what are the types of brands you guys work with?
It's a great question. So I used to be kind of an early employee at a fintech that aggregated debt financing in the UK. So I'm pretty well qualified to talk about that, I think. Back in 2016, we were saying that there was about 360 institutional or sort of official debt finance lenders in the UK. I think if you expanded that into the grey market of private individuals and maybe family office funds and people like that who are lending, there's probably about kind of 500 to 600 different entities out there that will lend to you as a business in various different forms. So yeah, it's a pretty dizzying array of different options out there, and there's loads of different terms that are used at the moment. So in the kind of consumer revenue-based space, a lot of people are saying, come take our non-dilutive capital, et cetera, et cetera. That's just debt financing, straightforward. Any debt finance lender that doesn't take a convertible aspect, that's non-dilutive. So that doesn't really mean much, but it's kind of termed to be quite founder-friendly and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of different options out there. It's a bit confusing. The way that some deals are structured and priced can be quite confusing. So there's a lot of interesting ways that lenders can do that. As always, the best way to sort of compare is APR, kind of annual pricing. We've heard a lot of quite interesting, metaphors. So plumbing, water, and all that kind of stuff.
We have today, yeah.
Yeah. So the one I like to use for finance is actually a Swiss Army knife. So there's so many different options out there, and so many different reasons why you might look to use different types of financing. So a good example is, we heard from the Viable panel, if you're working in a DTC brand that starts to sell into big box retail, you've closed a big funding round, you might not want to use that money on working capital. So invoice financing is quite an interesting option for brands that are looking to leverage potentially the POs or the invoices that come out of, placing a large order into Target or Waitrose or something like that. So there's using the receivables that you're getting from that side. But on the other side of that as well, you can look at revenue-based financing, which purely is looking at your last 12 months of revenue, and they'll say, look, you've done X over the last 12 months. We can give you a deal of Y, and you pay back a percentage of revenue. So that's a very interesting one. There's a lot of quite loud lenders in that space. And then obviously just term loan lending. That's what we do at SellersFi. Where effectively your affordability is looked at from a P&L and a balance sheet perspective. What's your debt servicing capability after sort of all of your other expenses? And we look to put deals on the table typically between 12 and 24 months for any reason, basically.
And what sort of brands most do you typically work with? What size are they?
So we can work with a really big range, actually. So our lowest ticket that we do is 25,000 in the UK. So normally we would look for a brand that's been going for about 6 to 12 months, and you'd need probably a 200K net sales over the last 12 months in order to be able to afford that. But, we work with a really broad range of brands, and, we can service up to 5 million, 10 million if you can afford it. So it's a really big range.
Amazing. So Kirsty, everyone's very excited that you're here because I think all brands dream that one day they could be a part of the JamJar portfolio. How do they make that dream a reality? What do they have to do? Who do they have to be?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things there. So JamJar typically invests between kind of 1 and 3 million. We can go as low as 250K and we can go as high as 5 million in the first round we get involved with. And we're looking very crudely for three things: people, product, and potential. People are the team brilliant? And obviously you see Mark and Gabe, you can attest they're brilliant. But we actually have it sounds quite a lot. We've got 15 criteria that we look for in founding teams that are broken into 5 different buckets that cover everything from how well you can execute, i.e. can you do a lot with not much money?
Do you like that, doing a lot with not much money?
Yes.
Okay.
Capital efficiency is tick.
Okay.
How well you can build a team, what's the kind of overall vision and ambition, lots of different things. We kind of score founders across those 15 qualities. Nobody has all of them, it's impossible, but we're really looking for spikes, like what are you really great at and where are you not so great, and you have the self-awareness to kind of fill those gaps. So that's the people side. The product side is, do consumers love the product? Typically we're going post-launch, not always. But that's a combination of us kind of trying the product ourselves, really understanding the differentiation, but also spending a lot of time on the cohort data. So what's the repeat rate? How many people are telling their friends about it? Is the CPA low and falling? What's the growth rate? All those things that make us convinced that consumers really, really love the product. And finally, the potential, which I think is a really interesting point to touch on. So we're typically looking for businesses that we think can exit for 250 million. So we have a 100 million fund, and therefore we have to look for businesses that we think can scale to a certain size. So not everybody is right for venture, full stop. Not everyone is right for certain size funds within venture. And it shouldn't be people's dream, because I think you can make a lot more money as a founder, potentially, if you don't raise venture and you keep more of the equity for yourself. So if you have the aim of becoming that kind of size business, please, totally, I would love to talk to you, and it should be the dream. But again, running a small profitable business that doesn't get to that size is also, I'm in total awe of the entrepreneurs that do that.
I always say that to the brands we meet as well. And I'm like, guys, if you're running a profitable business and you're happy, that's absolutely epic.
Totally. There's so many ways you can be successful, and venture is one of those tracks. But totally you can do other financing as well.
And when brands ask you guys, so what did JamJar help us with? What do you consider your USPs as a VC fund?
Yeah, totally.
Because you're very well known, so you've got that in everyone has heard of the company, but
so we typically say we can advise and help on the things that made Innocent absolutely brilliant. There was 3 founders of Innocent. Adam ran the commercial side, so he spent his whole 15 years at Innocent negotiating with the lovely people at Tesco and Asda, etc., which is a hard commercial thing to do. He also led the international expansion into Europe, so he helps on kind of commercial and international. Richard was the kind of brand genius behind Innocent, which is, I think, what people think of when they think of Innocent, but actually the commercial and the operation functions were just as strong. So Richard advises a lot on kind of brand and marketing, and then John does a lot on operations and supply chain. Innocent supply chain was incredibly complicated. Squashing fruit from 75 different countries, getting it onto shelf within 3 days without pasteurization. It was a nightmare, and he's really strong at that stuff. We all do a bit around company culture. How can you keep that company culture strong as you scale? And then, I advise a lot on kind of the financing and the strategy side. I think it's actually quite rare in the UK to have a firm that is run by entrepreneurs that founded, scaled, and exited the business. Like, often at some point along the way, you bring in professional management, or maybe the exit happened. And actually, a lot of VC firms are run by ex-financiers, current financiers as well. They don't have an operational background, so we see that as like our kind of big USP.
Okay, amazing. That's something we talk about all the time, how few VCs have actually been operational, had a business or created a business. What are your thoughts on that, Steve?
On which bit?
On how few VCs have actually had a business, created a business.
So I think the statistics are only 7% of VCs have actually started their own company, and only 1% of bankers have started their own company. So, just not having that context. I guess we get involved at an earlier stage of a business when maybe some of these things are not in place. And in my last 30 years, I've helped start, scale over 600 companies, 2 franchises. One had 400 franchisees, the other had 100 running alongside each other. So running one business is difficult. Running 500 or overseeing 500 takes some doing. You can only do that with systems. You can only do that with a really good understanding of the business model. You can only do that with a good understanding of the market you're going into and the timing, because you've got to have longevity for a business to go through different market cycles. And I think the funding environment out there at the moment is, if you look at the stats, the first half of this year compared to the first half of the previous year is down about 53% year on year funding-wise. So it's much harder at the moment to raise money. Valuations have taken a hit. For there's been a lot of write-downs. A lot of businesses have either failed or struggling. So if you are raising, it is a tough environment out there, but it's still possible. There's still ways to do it. And if you want to have a chat afterwards about how to do it, then.
And just my last question is, what is, we see a lot of brands, and a lot of them are very confused about what is their valuation, why has everything changed so much, why was it this, now it's that. What is your advice to brands? Because it is a changing market. What's your advice to brands on sort of understanding what's going on and knowing what to do about it?
I don't think there's one answer. It's unique for every business, every situation that you're in. So I think you just got to be realistic. If you are raising at the moment, then nobody likes to do a down round, which means you've raised at that level, but you've got to come down. It's not a nice thing to do, but sometimes it's a necessity in a difficult environment. A lot of businesses have shed a lot of staff. I was with a founder yesterday. They've gone from 35 people to 25 people in the last month. They've just had to reduce headcount, cut costs, be super lean, super efficient. Totally agree with what you talked about. To do that right from the beginning is actually the best way to do it, really.
Amazing. Well, I'm being frantically signalled out from the side of the stage. So look at this, all these signals coming in. So thank you so much, the three of you. They're all around. And thank you, guys.
Thank you.